This is Capturing Light, episode 159 with Christopher Ross, BSC.
Welcome to Capturing Light, a director of photographers podcast, spotlighting cinematography tips, tools, and techniques, inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. And now, your host, Les Gaddis.
Welcome to the Capturing Light podcast. I'm your host, Les Gaddis, and today we are talking to cinematographer Christopher Ross, BSC. We're talking Shogun, one of my favorite series that I've seen in a while. Watched it around this time last year, and I was hooked. Love the show, love the cinematography. Chris is like amazing when I talk to him, and just so open to share his knowledge, to answer questions. And he was just dropping bombs that like things that I never thought about that I think really will help my process and, like take my cinematography to the next level. There's few people that I talk to that I think have that much of an impact or might say one thing that really clicks and sticks with me. And he is one of those people. Definitely pay attention to this podcast because there's some things that if you really listen to and really grasp, you will ultimately just become a better cinematographer for sure. Because a lot of it, we focus on the artistry. So there's very little technical, because you can find technical, like there's the ASC magazine, there's like all these, online forums and things. The technical will come with time and you kind of get that. But when you get the creative, when you get the artistry, when you become a better storyteller, then I feel like that's what takes your films to the next level. I'm not going to ramble anymore. Here is that conversation with Christopher Ross, BSC. All right, so I want to thank Christopher Ross, BSC, for coming on a Capture and Light podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to
Yeah,
be here.
yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. And I know we're gonna kind of talk about Shogun. But I'm interested because you've done so much before that, and you've done a lot after that. But let's go to the beginning. Like, how did you get into the film industry? What was that process?
So yeah, sort of, like a lot of us, pretty long-winded. I knew that I wanted to work in film from my teenage years. I was a big movie buff, big film fan. Spent a lot of my teenage years in the cinema or at the Blockbuster Video, but I didn't have any connection to the industry in the UK at all. So I didn't really know what the departments were. I didn't really know what the construct of the industry was. So when I was at university and through high school and into university, I'd make little movies on VHS, on little camcorders and whatever. All of them terrible and pretentious, but I met a great group of people through doing it. Some of whom are still filmmakers today. And when I graduated from university, I did a degree in a totally unrelated field. I've got a degree in physics, which occasionally comes in useful when talking about chromatic aberration, but other than that, not useful at all. But the friends I made, we made lots of little short films, and when I left university, we carried on doing that, and I joined a little rental house in West London, drove a van, bumped the bumpers quite a bit, hit a few camera boxes into the side of things, Eventually wound up at Panavision and learned a lot about cameras and lenses and various things. But more importantly, learned a lot about the industry, about the how, how divided it is in terms of uh, uh, each department, and how uh, at the age of 25 you're going to be a spark, and then you might be a gaffer in 20 years time. Similarly, if you're a camera trainee, you might be a DP in 20 years time. Learn about the hierarchies and all that sort of stuff. And I always felt a bit of an outsider. I never really felt like I was part of the gang. In the UK, there's a lot of families in the industry. There's a lot of film schools that feed into the industry, and I wasn't really one of those. So I just kept shooting for little films, and eventually uh, shot a feature, and that allowed me to leave Panavision. I shot my first feature called London to Brighton when I still worked in the service department. Um, it was very, very low budget, but it was lucky that the director won a few awards for that movie,
Hmm.
and that was it. I went from being an unemployed cinematographer shooting short films every now and then to an unemployed cinematographer with a feature film credit. And so
Right.
it's like that's progress, right?
Right.
Progress.
That's funny. So then, I mean, after being unemployed as a cinematographer with one feature under your belt, what was the process to continue to keep that going? Because I mean, since then, I mean, I know, with freelance and, when you're on your own, there's ebbs and flows and things kind of, pick up and slow down. But like, what was that process like?
Yeah. Well, I think we've all gone through it, right? Or we're all living it on a
Hmm.
day-to-day basis. So I shot my first film in that film, London to Brighton, in 2005. It was October 2005. And it was a 3-week shoot. And Panavision very kindly allowed me to come off of payroll and for a month. So I basically took like a month unpaid leave, and then we wrapped at 5 a.m. on a night shoot at the end of the movie, and then I went back to my bench, and the following day, and it was a Sunday night, and Monday morning at 8:30, I was taking an SR3 apart, or a set of C series anamorphics. And I stayed at Panavision for another year, which was a really humbling experience because I was like, I've shot a movie, at least
Right.
on paper, I've shot a movie, but no one cares really, in the grand scheme of things. It's like for you, it's important. It's a big milestone. Um, but yeah, the you've got to wait for the universe to catch up and to appreciate you in some way, and I think that was a very humbling experience, and it set me on a course for the freelance life. Then the phone rang. You know, 2006 was pretty good. I spent a year at Panavision, but actually, I used every last bit of my holiday you shooting short films, and I operated on a couple of features as like a B camera or C camera operator. I did some visual effects unit stuff. So I was busy, I was shooting, but I was still, a permanent employee. Um,
Hmm.
and then at the tail end of 2006, uh, I was offered a commercial, and I'd run out of holiday to take, and I couldn't be an employee of Panavision anymore. And my wonderful boss, amazing guy called Jim Budd, who had watched me for the last 8 years, like become a DP basically. He said to me, today's like the day. Are you a camera service engineer? Are you going to stay here at Panavision for the rest of your career, or are you a cinematographer? And that's it. You gotta roll the dice. And so yeah, I rolled the dice, and then shot that little commercial. It was like 3 days for a confectionery company, and then I was unemployed again for 3 months before the next job. So yeah, the peaks and troughs, and you know, I would say, I'd say the rough. You got to take the rough with the smooth, and the peaks and troughs come and go, and they allow you some time to refresh your mind and feel connected to the universe again.
Right. So while we're on this subject, because I know, I mean, like for the majority of the industry worldwide, it's been pretty slow. Definitely, in the US with coming out of strikes and things like it's just been slow. Like what recommendations or how did you like what were you working on or how were you building yourself to stay inspired while things were slow? How did you kind of develop your taste? How did you learn? Like what was your process?
Yeah. Well, I guess um one of my main things has been to pretty much always say yes. And it's
Hmm.
not necessarily, there's a lot of DPs that are very, very selective about their work, and they'll stay at home until they get the right project. And that's really cool if you've got enough money to do that and you don't have a mortgage to pay and family to look after and all that sort of stuff. But I had kids pretty young. I've got 4 children, and they all 4 of them were around before I was a cinematographer. So so um, balancing up what it is to be a creative alongside what it is to be like a member of the human race and a family orientated person has
Hmm.
always been really hard, and it's particularly when work is really quiet. So when the work was quiet, I would always I'd do whatever commercials, whatever music videos. If someone wanted me to shoot a music video for the equivalent of a couple of $100, then I'd be doing that. Um, when there's no work around at all, I was a DP back in, so I was, officially shooting back in 2008 when the previous writer's strike created a bit of a downturn in the
Hmm.
UK, and not just the writer's strike, but it was like the global financial meltdown, and a writer's strike culminated in a real slowdown in the UK. And it's super hard to feel to be inspired when you're not working. And so
Right.
for me, it was about taking jobs, shooting anything that came my way, documentaries, um, spots for the internet, and also having like a pet project of your own to be working on at the same time. And I still do
Hmm.
that now. So like when I'm not working, I'll be taking stills, or I'll be working on some piece of technology. So lately, I've been occupied with making my own 3D printed lights,
Hmm.
little kind of like Hydra panels and that kind of thing. Um, but I suppose it's whatever quietens the storm. We
Right.
all have that storm inside us that's telling us that we're not good enough, or the work's not right, or nobody loves you, essentially, in terms
Right.
of in terms of the work. And so trying to get the black dog off of your back and feel positive about your artistic contribution is yeah, it's a really important lesson to learn, and to not take it personally, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. So, kind of jumping to Shogun, which um production was in 2021 is when production started.
Yep. Yep. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so like how did that whole process come to be as far as like how did you get, brought onto the project? What was prep like the pre-production up until the production part of Shogun?
Yeah. So I think FX as a network had the rights to the novel for quite a few years. I remember when I was working on a TV show called Trust, they
Hmm.
were in the process of trying to get it off the ground. Weren't sure whether it would be a 6-parter or an 8-parter or whatever. Anyway, that version that was due to be shot in the UK got put into turnaround, and then I think a couple of years later, just before the pandemic hit, FX had approached Jason Marks and Rachel Kondo about doing an adaptation or thinking about a new adaptation of the novel, trying to take it, trying to take the ownership of the story into the hands of the Japanese warlords rather than John Blackthorne. And
Hmm.
so Justin and Rachel had taken a go at the scripts and had the project got into the green light phase, and literally just before the pandemic hit, they were about to go full guns blazing into production. Then obviously the world shut down, and
Hmm.
but they kept a few people on, and all the way through the pandemic, they were working on set design and concept art and casting and all that sort of stuff. And so yeah, I think towards sometime at the beginning of 21, one of the directors that I've worked with a few times, a lovely guy called Jonathan Van Tullochen, um, gave me a call and said, I've been asked to meet for this, this feudal Japanese samurai show called Shogun. And he and I had both read the novel when we were teenagers and whatever. And yes, we started talking about what the show could look like. He was going in for some meetings. He was going to meet um, Gina and the team at FX, and Justin and Rachel and that team. And so yeah, I helped him put together a little portfolio of images. One of the very interesting things about the 100 years of cinema is how the Wild West Western has fed into samurai culture, and how
Hmm.
samurai culture has sort of filtered into the like Yakuza genre, and how that has then subsequently filtered into via westerns back into sci-fi. And really we have like a real quite a postmodern mix of genre inflection, so we were able
Hmm.
to pull reference material from lots of quite obscure places that we thought would be a helpful thing. Anyway, Jonathan got the job and
Hmm.
started work sometime in the spring of 21, and then he was looking for a DP. So again, he gave me a call and said, would you meet Justin? Would you meet the team? Would you meet Ed, the producer, etc.? So again, I put a separate little document together of images, and then luckily got picked to shoot this amazing show.
Right. No, that's awesome. And you were the cinematographer for episode one and two?
One and two, yeah.
Okay. So you were I'm pretty sure crucial in establishing the look, and like how was it how many cinematographers worked on the show?
So there were four. So I shot Eps one and two, and then Ara Replad, a Scandinavian cinematographer, came in for Ep three, and then Sam McCurdy, another Brit who's based in the States, came in for four and five, and a few more after that. And then Marc Laliberté, a Canadian cinematographer, also photographed a couple of episodes. So yeah, it was a real team effort.
Right. So that leads into my next question as far as just the collaboration aspect of working with other cinematographers. How was that? Because I mean, like working on something that's that carries on for so many different episodes, and staying consistent. Like how was the collaboration between the cinematographers, and being able to like have a cohesive visual style?
Yeah, so I was the first one on the gig, and there's actually, to be honest, very little crossover in terms of the time that you work on a project. So I was around, I think, so I was on a film shooting in Turkey until the end of June. And our principal photography on Shogun was scheduled for the middle of September. So I jumped straight from from the film in Turkey out to Vancouver to start prep, and got heavily involved in the work that Helen Jarvis, the production designer, and Carlos Rosario, the costume designer, had been working on. So in terms of color palette, the concept art and the art department drawings were a vital piece of learning for me, and that was, to be honest, the key collaboration in terms of the look of the show
Mm-hmm.
was the combination of myself, Helen, and Carlos. And then from the set design and the location choices that Jonathan Jay was making along with Helen, that then leads you into a certain sort of aesthetic choices by the
Mm-hmm.
nature of those location choices. So yeah, when I first joined the project, one of the things that I try to do on almost everything that I do is that if there's a dominant location, or dominant locations, I'll do like a full light study of the environment. So I'll just hang out at the location from dawn to dusk, so
Mm-hmm.
I can track the path of the sun in real time and take photos of what the place looks like under different conditions, basically, in the hope that, across a day you might get some patches of sun, you might get some patches of cloud, and you can try to see the character. Um, and yeah, so spending a little bit of time at our Manati Bay location, which was the lower Anjiro harbour, and at our Osaka village, our Osaka harbour location, and our Osaka palace, that was all built in one place. That led me to uh, a bunch of choices about the look of the show, and how uh, great our forests looked when under the slate grey sky of a Vancouver autumn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and I guess all of this is done over like a 10-12 week period. So you're dipping in and dipping out of locations, you're dipping in and dipping out of the stages are being constructed. You can watch as the sets modify themselves and add notes to the designer and to the art department and the construction team, see if
Mm-hmm.
you can make some changes to the sets, etc. And then at the same time as that, I'm working with the director on the kind of the drama bit of the show, which is, what is the way that we're going to tell the story of Blackthorn? What is the way that we're going to tell the story of Toranaga? Or how do we introduce Mariko Sana? All of those sort of character based choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of have like a set of color palette choices that are naturally approaching you from the set design, and then you have a set of like drama choices that are coming at you from the script and rehearsals and various things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea with the look of the show is to try to pull those things into some kind of, you know uh cohesive unit, basically.
Right.
And so that was the key to creating the look of the show. We did a big set of camera lens tests, where I tested a whole bunch of lenses, probably 12 sets of lenses on 3 different camera manufacturers, and until we settled on the Hero set, which was the the Sony Venice,
Mm-hmm.
with the Class X lenses from Hawk. They became like the standard look of the show. And then at the same time as doing all of those tests, we also had costume tests with the artists, costume, hair, makeup, the bald caps, the wigs, the various things. And we did all of those on partially built sets. So I
Mm-hmm.
would light a partially built set, and and photograph, Anna or Hiroyuki in their costume on in situ. And they were the things that fed into more knowledge about what the show was going to look like. And as time wore on, the the softer the color palette, the more smoke and atmosphere we could put into the imagery, the more abrasive the environment could be, the more rain, the more water, the more drips,
Mm-hmm.
the more environmental we could make the images, the stronger the feeling of being in the world was for us. And then the idea was to, like you say, with the start of this question, was how do we fill that into the collaboration? So so JVT and I put together a kind of mood film
Mm-hmm.
um, about about a month before a month before filming, which was sort of a compilation of different atmospheric images from various films and shows over the years, and it's an indicator of sort of camera movement and editorial pacing, and just trying to gather an atmosphere so that the other directors, other cinematographers, and the crew that we're working with can have some sense of what the ultimate intention of the piece is. Um, and then start producing rushes, which, by the time by the time Errol, who shot episode 3, was in town, I think we were probably 2 weeks in to shooting. So he had 2 weeks worth of rushes to catch up on before we started conversation. So we had a few dinners, and then Sam came on board probably about 2 weeks after Errol arrived, because he was ready to do episode 4. And there's dinners and meetings and conversations about the look and all that sort of stuff. But really, it's like you do a whole heap of prep, then you
Right.
start producing rushes, and it's the rushes that are the biggest indicator of the look of the show. And also, all of the sets have lighting pre-rigged into them to a certain extent. All of the DPs have total control over how they want each set to look, but there's an amount of environmental lighting that's already in place at the flick of a switch, courtesy of the brilliant gaffer David Tickell and Jared Tiffin, the rigging gaffer. So
Right.
yeah, it's
So
like a massive collaboration, really.
yeah, and for those that may not know what rushes are, what they look like could you explain? Like, I mean, I know you went heavy into pre-production, which I mean, obviously it's apparent because for like I haven't said this, but Shogun has been my favorite show of this year, watching it. So good. But like rushes, like
Yeah.
what's a rush and then how is it important to the pre-production process?
Okay. So yeah. So the rushes are the material that you produce on each day of filming. And so on day one, you produce, maybe an hour of material across 2 cameras. And then as a collective, you can either watch, in the good old days, you'd sit in a cinema and you would watch the rushes projected of just a selected 10 minutes worth of the material. These days it's on a portal, and you watch your material on the portal.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's the way to get your head around the how the show looks and is modifying and is evolving as time goes on. With all, when you shoot an episode 1 or an episode 2, that first block of a show, it's you have to be pretty experimental. You have to
Mm-hmm.
have a really great idea, hopefully, for what the show is going to look like, and then you have to be able to modify that first principle to an extent once you begin filming,
Mm-hmm.
because none of the we had a huge pre-production period, but we only really had 2 weeks with the actors. And in fact, we probably only had 4 days before shooting with Cosmo Jarvis, who plays John Blackthorne.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to, the best kind of camera operating that you can do is camera operating that is totally in sync with performance.
Right.
There's no there's the great the great camera operators of cinema, like a Mitch Dubin. They're just incredible observers of humans,
Mm-hmm.
and they do, shots are created um with the performers in mind. So if you don't know what the performers are doing or how they're going to, whether a character's going to be big and blustery or, centered and calm and still, and until you find out what each of these characters are, and only some of that is in the writing, and a lot of that comes from the performer themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're working in the early part, when you're working on a movie, and when you're working on the first couple of episodes of a show, the actors are finding their place. They're finding who their characters are. You're finding what the look of the show is. The directors, the producers are finding what the look of the show is, and so it's one big experiment. And there's no like right answer. You know, it's all just a gray area. And so
Mm-hmm.
the idea with it is that you have a philosophical, well, at least this is my approach. You have a philosophical approach to the show that you think, or to the film, to the imagery.
Mm-hmm.
And then as that imagery starts to actually exist, and you then have to go, right, was that correct? Is today's work, what we did today, is that what we should be doing tomorrow? And you make a little modification, and you make a little modification, and yeah, it's what makes making films and television shows so vibrant. It's amazing.
Right. So, I know you were the cinematographer. Did you have an operator, or did you operate?
I had two operators on the show, and yeah, another guy called Shane McLeod. The A camera operator changed a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
ending with oh man, what's John's surname? John, my brain has gone dead. Was a brilliant Steadicam operator who wasn't available when we first started filming, but came on board on about like week 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Shane McLeod, great B camera operator, was one of the things that was super important for us. It's an interesting aside, actually. So when you're when you read a script, the words that are on the page are only one of the stories.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you notice when you start working with actors is that there's always a secondary story. So in Shogun, the secondary story is this relationship between Mariko Sana and John Blackthorne.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early stages, in the early episodes, they only really share screen time as a translation relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very, 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 very clinical, um, a very clinical relationship, but also it's transactional, and it's transactional based on John Blackthorne's relationship with Toranaga and Toranaga's relationship with John Blackthorne.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and so if you just read the script, uh, and you just want to deliver on the words as they're written, Blackthorne's looking at Toranaga, Toranaga's looking at Blackthorne. That's it. But we know that there's this, 4 episodes in, there's this, a full-bodied, a full-blooded uh, relationship between the two characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that's super important is that one camera is telling the regular story about Blackthorne's relationship with Toranaga and vice versa, and the other camera is working to tell the secondary narrative, which is the silent story that's going on between the other two characters.
Mm-hmm.
And and that was a technique that we employed pretty frequently in the first two episodes of Shogun. Is that there's a primary camera that's on Steadicam or a crane that's moving with Toranaga or moving with Yabashige, and a secondary camera that's picking up the subplot, basically.
Right.
And
Well, and
so,
that's so interesting too that like you assigned it to the different cameras because I know so many times people will be like, okay, well, wish you have your A cam, your B cam, whatever, and then like your B cam is usually like your secondary camera, but it's just like the camera that can get quote unquote coverage if they just need to stay out of ACAM's way or this or that. And the fact that like tying the secondary story, which sometimes is just as important, if not more, you know, than sometimes the actual ACAM's coverage. It just
yeah,
it levels the playing field to where you have stories being like told in different ways that help, the overall story as a whole, which is very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, I think I've worked with some amazing directors over the last few years, and one of the things that's you know very very obvious about filmmaking is that actually scripts as a document, a script is a very poor representation of the film that you are or TV show that you're about to make. It it's great, but it's like a play. It's a lot of words that will be delivered by performers, but it doesn't really bear any emotional pictorial sense of what the show is going to look like. It's just you know, each feature film script that you work on is 100 white pages with black text, and a far more vibrant way of delivering the story would be to have a storyboard interwoven with the text. But we are a literary tradition,
Hmm.
so our scripts come from typically theatrical stage writers or novelists that write for the. So anyway, that's my way of saying that a lot of there is a tendency to focus a lot of attention on the person that is speaking,
Hmm.
and more frequently than not in the drama is the response of the person that is listening. um and so in a script you always focus on, it says Toranaga speaks, it says Blackthorn speaks. In the world of Shogun, what was super important to us was that whenever Blackthorn was speaking and Mariko Sana was translating, she was falling in love with him.
Hmm.
And so it didn't matter. It didn't matter that there was that Blackthorn was giving information to Toranaga, or Toranaga was interrogating Blackthorn for more information about the Spanish, the Spanish and Portuguese bases in Macau. What mattered was that Mariko Sana was hearing the words.
Right.
And so yeah, that was the MO from Jonathan, was that we need to shoot the these amazing samurai, and this sort of confrontation between these powerful men, but more importantly, it's about this woman who's listening, who is about to become a vital piece in this feudal system. um, and I think that was for me, that was the great success of the first couple of episodes of Shogun, is how it sort of sets a universe, but
Hmm.
it also sets a universe full of characters. And yeah, and that's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I was gonna I know we're coming up pretty close on time, but one of the questions that I wanted to wrap up with, it's kind of leading into this question. When you are prepping and you're reading a script, how are you finding the story within the story? Or like what's, because that I'm sure it takes just experience and time, but like being able to look at a script and say, okay, I know what's on the page, but also too, while I focus on the page, this is what is needing to be visualized in order to help the story come to life, you know.
Yeah. Well, it really helps having an amazing director. So Jonathan Van Tulleken, who I was working with, is a phenomenal worker. And we were very lucky. It's not always the way in the world of television that we had all 10 scripts. They weren't 10, it wasn't 10 complete scripts, but they were versions of 10 scripts. They were versions of the story. And so, before I even began prep, I knew the direction that Blackthorn, I knew the direction that Toranaga, I knew the direction that Yabashige and Mariko Sana were all heading. And so you can go, right, okay, there's a scene in episode 5 and it looks a little bit like this scene. So why don't we just try and formulate this in a way that means that by the time you see this scene again, you kind of know the outcome in a
Hmm.
way. Um, uh, that's one of the things. Obviously, you can't, if you're not physically shooting those episodes or you're not physically directing those scenes, then things are going to change. But what you can do at least is set the characters off in a direction,
Right.
and and yeah, and then I guess I suppose we've spoken a lot just about the dramaturgy of things. It's one of the things you find as a cinematographer is that you tend to, you when you first begin, uh, a lot of things are pictorial. Like
Hmm.
what is this frame,
Right.
and then once you kind of get a handle on how to construct a wide shot, how to construct a close up, etc., then it gets a little more. Then you start working with more complex directors. You can be doing a lot more of the emotional stuff with the camera,
Hmm.
and that was the great thing about Shogun, is that we were able to do, um, set the scene both tonally and atmospherically and emotionally for the rest of the season, really.
Right. No, that's awesome advice. So I know that you have projects that you've been working on since Shogun. How can people keep up with what you're doing? Like what's the best place? Should they go to your website? Should they, like could you give your Instagram handle? Where's the best place to keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, so I'm an old guy, so yeah, I've got an Instagram feed, but I don't feed it too often. But yeah, it's Edgy Bevel. If anyone wants to follow me there, and they can look at the website, or yeah, I mean, just watch television and watch films, and I'm sure I'll crop up
Yeah.
somewhere on your screen. You don't need to chase me down too hard. It's not really worth it. Yeah.
I think it is because you're doing some incredible things, and I learned a lot honestly just listening to you. So Chris, thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate you so much.
No worries. Thank you, Les. Thank you for the invitation to the recording. It's been a joy.
I want to thank Chris for coming on the Capturing Light podcast. Make sure you follow him. Keep up with what he's doing because this guy's everywhere. Like, I watched Shogun, then I watched other television series, and I was like, wait, who shot this? What? He shot this? I mean, he's killing the game for sure. Like, he's shooting some of the best television out. Um, and he's just awesome. So connect with him, follow him, like let's let people know that Chris is like legit, has been legit for a while, and like an unsung hero in cinematography that people need to know about. So enough with that praise. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My Instagram at Les Gaddis. You can email me, directly. Les@gaddisvisuals.com. You can email me. I very rarely, honestly, check like my Capturing Light email, unfortunately. So like, reach out to me personally, because that's the best way to make sure that I see your questions, and I see if you want to connect. Yeah, like that's really all I have for now. I'm excited for next week's episode as well. Like again, we've just had like a good run of podcasts. Next week we're talking Daredevil Born Again. So yeah, fun stuff. I'm excited to keep sharing and keep podcasting, and we'll keep it going. I'll catch you in the next episode of Capturing Light.
Thanks for listening to Capturing Light with Les Gaddis, a Director of Photographers podcast. Inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. A Gaddis Visuals production.